This is the Welcome to Humanity podcast with thought leader and transformative psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. This show focuses on the betterment of humanity on a global scale. Each episode will leave you enlightened, inspired, and ready to make an impact in your world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to your life. Welcome to humanity. Here's Dr. Fred.
Over the last year and a half, it's been an opportunity to meet some great people, and it really has been, for me, just a welcoming of humanity. And so there's an opportunity today to have another experience that falls deeply into the category of humanity, spectacular nature of humanity, and extraordinary nature of what it really means to be human and what it means to be a human among humans. And you're going to see where I'm going with that once you get a little taste of our guest, who is my good friend, Dr. Brandon Erdos. So Brandon is someone that I've known for a few years now. I think it's going on 4 or 5 years. And, our paths have crossed in a number of arenas. Brandon is a fellow psychiatrist, and also we have met in landmark education, where both of us have done a whole lot of training in growth and development. And I've actually visited Brandon where he lives, pretty close to where he lives over there in Massachusetts. I guess I never really got into Brandon's house, but we got pretty close there in Massachusetts and in Vermont. And it's just a pleasure to have my good friend Brandon Erdos on the Welcome to Humanity podcast. Welcome, Brandon. It's great to see you and great to be with you. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Fred. It's great to see you and great to be with you.
It's really, really cool. Who knew that?
Who knew that we would wind up here, right?
It all boils down to being right here. And this is where we are now. It all led to now. So, it's really is great. Our listeners can't see us both smiling, but we're both smiling ear to ear as we look at each other. And the video is likely not being shown on the podcast itself. So the Welcome to Humanity podcast is primarily audio, but I'm using video so that I can be in eye contact with Brandon as we explore the topics, whatever those are that we're about to explore. Each and every one of us is really dealing with something, right? No matter whether we're tackling some of the big problems in the world or maybe even the tiny ones, we all face challenges. Now, I've been a psychiatrist for many years, and I've worked with all kinds of people from all walks of life. I've worked with more people than I can really count, from various backgrounds, dealing with more issues than you can imagine, of all sizes and shapes. So naturally, over time, I've developed a number of ways to assist others in gaining a new sense of freedom and empowerment. Now, I'm pulling back the curtain on one of those methodologies, and I'm going public, revealing the process and associated mindset that contributed to using this particular method with maximum effectiveness. It's all laid out in my new book called Cultivating, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression. You can pick this book up on Amazon.com in either Kindle or paperback format. And as a listener to the Welcome to Humanity podcast, I'd like to offer you a completely free copy in audiobook format. Just go to welcometohumanity.net/creative and download your free audiobook copy of Cultivating today. I really look forward to hearing about your Cultivating breakthrough. Now, let's get back to this amazing conversation. Welcome to Humanity. So, Brandon, one of the ways we like to get started on Welcome to Humanity is really just opening up the door for you. And I'd like to ask a very simple question. It's a simple question that it's called my 9-letter question. And it's a grammatically correct question that has a total of 9 letters in it. And it really does open up the door a little bit. And some people are thrown back on their heels. And I'm guessing that's not going to be your personal experience. But it is a broad and beautiful question. And so here it is. So, Brandon Erdos, who are you?
It's great. I love that you consider this the simple question. I can't wait for the complex questions, Fred. When you said, it's a 9-letter question, I was like, who are you? And it was like, oh my God, really? So my immediate answer to that is I'm a smart rat. I'm the guy who can figure out the answer, or the answer to what's the question going to be.
Ah, interesting.
And I've made good use of that over my lifetime, I would say. The 46 plus years that I've been here on this planet. But who I am, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother. So clearly I'm a family man, I'm a drummer and musician, I'm a leader of transformational work, I'm a consumer of transformational work. I would say that I'm a curious human being. One of my passions really is being curious and discovering and kind of cracking things open and really with people. Like, I'm interested in people. As I think about this, Fred, one of the things that my wife says to me all the time is, "You're staring."
Mm.
And, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm staring. Do you see what they're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. What are you supposed to do? What else should I be doing?
I'm not supposed to look?
Yeah. Yeah, you really do. You impress me with your curiosity, with your ongoing sort of natural curiosity, the inquiry that you bring forth when you're with others or when you're watching others or when you're part of others, or even when you're facilitating others. Your curiosity runs very deep as a part of your protoplasm, a part of not only who you call yourself as, but it almost appears that you're almost a prisoner of your curiosity. Like, this is how you move. This is what you roll with, that each and every moment brings forth a level of curiosity that has you asking questions. And then we can go back to the first thing you said, this idea that you're a smart rat, is that you've done this so much that the available answers for how this is going to go are often land on you before the other people in the room. Like, you're already prepared for what the next, playing chess with life. Like, you're already prepared maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead of the average person. And so you knew when at some level, as you say now, retroactively or retrospectively, or I'm not sure which one actually applies, that when I say 9-letter question, I'm going to ask you, who are you? Like, what other question could it be, Fred? I mean, that's all that's here. Oops. Oh my gosh, I am. That's a large question. And you almost get a jump on the world, but at some level, that anticipation of what's in front of you, does that ever get in your way of really being open to anything else that might have occurred otherwise?
Yeah, of course. I mean, anticipating where things are going and being 2 or 3, at least thinking I'm 2 or 3 steps ahead, not necessarily even really being 2 or 3 steps ahead, but having the belief that I'm 2 or 3 steps ahead has at times not opened the door to creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would say one of the places where there's real juice in life is being surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And being someone who's really good at seeing the board, so to say, or being able to see where things are going, doesn't leave a lot of space for surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Let's go down this rabbit hole a minute, because there's another piece to this, and maybe we pick it up in our growth and development work, or maybe in our psychiatric work as fellow growth and development providers, fellow growth and development consumers, and in fact, psychiatrists are called on to bring forth other people's optimization, as well as, at least in my case, having been on the other side of psychiatrists for many years in my life in therapy or psychoanalysis, or there's a real opportunity to think our way into what it is that we're growing into. So, I feel like I'm pretty gifted in that area as well. Like, hey, I can kind of guess what's coming around the corner. I have enough experience to know that this is about the only 1 or 2 things that can occur, so I can prepare for what it is coming in a conversation or in whatever people are about to do or become. And by doing that, not only do I limit myself so that surprise is less likely, but I actually create the future that it is that I'm looking for. I actually am responsible for it turning out. It isn't like I predict it like I'm watching a movie. I predict it and then I make it happen. And then I get to call myself right with that's the way this was going to go. Now, of course, this lands pretty deeply on some of the work that we have treaded upon inside the Landmark Enterprise and other areas of life, including psychiatry. I'd love to hear your view as I throw that little nugget your way.
I think there might be a distinction between predicting the future and having it go the way I predicted it and saying this is how the future is going to go and creating it that way.
Yeah. So talk about that distinction. It's a very interesting interface there, Brandon.
I think there's a way in which you could say life was going to go. Like, I can look at, I think there's a predictable nature to the way life tends to go, and, it's sort of like there could be an experience in life of the same old, same old. I sit with a patient and I hear what they're saying and it's kind of like, oh, right, I get the layout of the land. I know where I'm going with this. They'll say what they say. I'll discover what I discover, but there's not much that's going to surprise me in this interaction today. And, yay, take it to the bank and good job for me. And it's resting on the training and the experience I have and the kind of listening that I get to bring to what I'm doing. And
Ultimately
and then,
limiting the aspect of surprise, though, when you do that. I mean, or at
well,
least
yeah.
diminishing the likelihood of surprise, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it may even, at work or in interactions with other people, it may even limit the questions I ask
Exactly.
or the things I'm looking for, And then there's opportunity to say, like, this is how life is going to go for me, and not even know how to make that happen,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's distinct from predicting and knowing how it's going to go. If I look and think about either musical experiences or experiences watching sports games, in one sense, there's a structure in music and there's a way in which, a song is supposed to go. And then inside of that, I really love improvisational music. So, inside of that, it's listening for the thing that's going to take it to on a left turn, and then like a return to the theme, and then like to elevate it, and then like to bring it back, and all of that unpredictability which can happen inside the structure of music. So and then there are times where it's like it is very structured and you know how it's going to go. Like I
Fascinating.
can.
It's really great. So a week and a half ago on the other podcast that I have, Insanity, I had a drummer extraordinaire that Sam and I interviewed. Apparently one of, if not the most sought after drummer in all of the United States. And his name is Kenny Aronoff. Maybe you know Kenny. And so, and he's played with everybody. Dude has played with literally everybody. And he's an amazing human being. And we had a beautiful conversation. And we spoke a little bit to this idea of improvisation. And I'm going to see if I can segue what you and I have been talking about the two futures. So, for instance, in a default future, if you will, in a future of, well, this is how this always goes, so it's likely to continue going that way. And I can prepare myself for that happening because I already know through my experience that the likelihood of that happening is, I've interviewed people like this before, or I've been in this circumstance before. And after 3 comes 4, and after 4 comes 5. And so I know how to respond to 4 and 5. And so I'll just sit here until 5 comes, and then this conversation will be over. And that's it. Or that declarative future, another thing that we're familiar with, which is the opportunity to make the world go in a certain direction because I say so, and then live into that future without having any idea about how we're going to get there or what path I'm going to take. But to declare a future and then have all my actions and thoughts and behaviors be consistent with making that future that I declared happen. These are two distinct ideas of the future, one of them being left, I feel like I'm left at the effect of the future that I already know is going to happen. And the other one, I am the mass creator of the future that I say is going to happen. And there really are two entirely different experiences. Yes, you're right.
Completely. Yeah.
And they seem related to each other. They seem like, well, it's just a future. I mean, and they really allow for different levels of empowerment or disempowerment.
Well, I think they allow for a different experience of life.
Yeah, right.
The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how it goes. Experience of life. There really is an aspect of like the same old, no discovery, and ultimately, say like almost no aliveness to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The declarative future really opens the space for the surprise.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
It opens the space for the unpredictable. And in my experience, even I've declared all sorts of futures, some of which I've stuck to, some of which I haven't, right? And it's in the game of playing to get to that future that really, it's not the destination. It's the time between the declaration and the fulfillment of that future that like worlds and worlds and worlds of new experience arise. And I can easily say that sometimes I forget it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? I get so focused on the destination that I forget about the joy of the journey.
Yeah.
I think back to when I spent like a week and a half in Hawaii after I graduated from medical school. One of the places I was, Maui, and there's an audio taped trip that you can take. It's called the Road to Hana, right? And it's like this amazing, and like you're listening to an audio of, and it says like, in half a mile, take a turn to the left and get out of the car, and there's this beautiful waterfall, and then like you drive on, and you can like, this beautiful vista, and like, and they're like, it's a fairly long drive, and it's like a 2-lane high, 1-lane, 2-lane highway, and all these beautiful places to stop. And I remember part of the way on the drive being like, when are we going to get there?
Mm-hmm. Right. That's right.
You know, it's like, when are we going to get there? And like, the point wasn't really to get there,
Yeah.
Fred. The point was to stop along the way. Like, and like, I saw these amazing things along the way, and like the beautiful lushness and all that. And you get to Hana, and it's like, I mean, it is literally, it's like a shack with an ice cream store. That was the destination.
Right.
And it wasn't even like great ice cream. It was just like, it was just like any port in a storm. Thank God they have ice cream here. It's really hot.
That's great. It's so funny. We really do get caught up with this idea that somehow that there's going to be a rest or an exhale or, an accomplishment or a checkbox waiting for us after we declare that we are on our way to have something get done, so that, somehow we get a breather upon arrival of something that never actually occurs. But in fact, by being so focused on that, the journey gets lost and all the surprises along the way gets lost. And if we really focus on it, not only does it get lost, we put on blinders and don't see all the massive miracles that are going on and surprises that are going on the pathway. I'd love to ask you this next question. So I brought up Kenny Aronoff, and so we really dug into a lot of drumming, among other things, rock drumming. The first question I asked him is, who's the best, right? I'm sure he's heard it a million times, but in his opinion, who is the best rock drummer? Because I'm a bit slanted in this one. And so I like to ask my drummer friends who they think is the best rock drummer and, who's ever lived. And what would you say? I say who's ever lived because a couple of them are dead.
I got it. I will go with my most controversial answer, which is,
oh, no kidding,
Ringo Starr.
Holy cow. No one I've ever heard. No one. That is really great. And Ringo Starr was all over. He lands in that podcast with Kenny, but not as the best drummer. He lands several times. So tell me a bit about Ringo.
He invented rock drumming. It all goes back to Ringo. And Ringo could play any style. He could do anything. You listen to Helter Skelter and it sounds like John Bonham. And then he can do like the tango, and he can do this and he can do that. And it's always about the music for. And then you listen to and then I was just listening to Abbey Road last night, and like there's at the end, there's like Ringo's not this flashy guy, but like all of a sudden it's like he became Keith Moon.
He does become Keith Moon in that medley. You're right. In the medley, he runs the medley. It's true.
There's like, a 10-second like drum solo, and it's like, oh my God, it's Keith Moon. And, and then like he could do it all, plays perfectly to the music, and he invented the whole thing. He just invented the whole thing. As a rock drummer. So all these guys are, I love Mitch Mitchell. I think he's great. I love him. Neil Peart, love Neil Peart. I mean, had you asked me this when I was in middle school or high school, we'd been like, Neil Peart, definitely Neil Peart, right? I'm a huge Rush fan, but I really go back to like, he's the dude who invented rock drumming.
Yeah, see that. Thank you. Well, check this. Watch me segue. Watch me like master this segue here. Created future, default future, creating something into a world that we didn't know was happening versus knowing how this thing is going, because I've lived this already and I already know the likelihood of this. And so, the next snare to tap is the one. I know when I'm supposed to do that. I'm supposed to do that now. Like when you're doing covers, if you're doing Bonham covers or you're doing Moon covers, you're doing Star covers, you're doing Baker covers, you're doing Mitchell covers, there's a place for you to hit the drum at various points, and don't you dare not do it the way they did it. There are areas in a song where you better start your solo right about now. Like right about now, like you don't get to mess with when you start the solo. And so, there's a described and prescribed way to proceed with that music and your role in the music as it's unfolding. So if you're going to do Black Dog, you're going to do it that way because that's, if you're going to do When the Levee Breaks, which is a Bonham gem, you're going to do that because that's what he did. He laid down those sticks, those times right then, and you're going to have to do something that sounds close enough to that. Pay respect to the way things have gone. But in the world, you did mention that, you're about improvisation, and improvisation, like really jamming, I guess is what might be the term that us non-musicians might use, like jamming to what is being called for next into sound space, into vibrational space, and then delivering it with the other people in your band, whoever else is playing any kind of strings or woodwinds or whatever they're playing, like what's called for, but it isn't coming from your brain then, it seems. It's coming from your heart or from your vessel or from your creative source. And then you, as the Ringo Starr, get to be the backbeat rhythm. You get to be the dude who's responsible for the rhythm, responsible for delivering the backdrop rhythm. Now, excuse me if I'm saying something that's just naive and ignorant. I'm not a drummer, but I get a sense that I'm saying something that is at least going to tweak you a bit. And so I'm into now, how does your drumming get affected in the world of a created future versus at the effect of default future?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think the way I actually look at, I don't sit down and go, this is how it's going to, this is how I play, right? I've been playing, I think I was born a drummer, and, I have pictures of me at 4 years old with like little drumsticks, and like, I just love rhythm and drumming. So, I think it's not like when I sit down to play music, I think like, oh, now it's going to get all free for me or anything like that. I think really it comes from listening. So it's a real interplay of ideas, and when it's with high level musicians, when there's when there's a real connection, it's not like I'm directing it. It's a conversation, and it maybe I hear something and I want to take it that way, and like with somebody who you're really with, they'll hear my response to that, and then all of a sudden it gets picked up on, right? And I've had the good fortune of playing with amazing people. Not famous people, just amazing musicians. And I remember in college playing a gig, and right before the gig, my piano player and I, we had a little disagreement, and then we went and we played this gig for like an hour and a half, and we worked it out.
Isn't that great? Without words.
Oh, it was all like he would be playing something and it'd be like, I'd respond. And then he would play something in response, and at the end of the gig, it was like, oh my God, I love you.
That's so awesome.
And so I don't think it's just like a musical thing. I think the gift of music and the gift of having played improvisational music, whether it be jazz or more jam-based rock music, whatever it may be, right, is that there is a real flexibility and a real commitment to listening, to being out here and really listening to what's happening, so that I can turn on a dime, so that the space of creation can be available.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. Watch this. Space of creation. Yeah, listen, I'm looking at the things that you said you were, that you say that you are. So I'll go over just my scratch here of what you said in order, which was, father, husband, son, brother, family man, drummer, musician, transformational leader, transformational consumer, curious human being, and others, and psychiatrist. I think it's that had preceded you. So you have that. And this word listening, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's really important to listen to be a musician. It's certainly critical to be a transformational leader. It's, it's also required if you're going to be a consumer. Curious human being that's all you're doing is listening for the world as it unfolds for you. Then we go into family, like who you are as a dad. And, I honor dads. So for what it's worth, my dad, who passed away in 1998, would have turned 100. And so happy birthday, Dad, and happy Father's Day to all your fathers. And when you said Hannah, the road to Hannah, my daughter's name is Hannah, so I'm a father to a Hannah. And it almost seems like this father, husband, son, brother, and I am all those things too, family man, and I guess I am that as well. Perhaps there's nothing more critical than listening to have that be all of those relationships be deeply effective. That what I'm really doing is listening and being surprised, or at least opening up the possibility for a space of creation and balancing the future that I know is going to happen anyways, because I've done this before, with the future that I get to declare that I have no idea how to create. Like somehow these are both okay. And that's how I get to be a father. That's how I get to be a son. That's how I get to be a man. That's how I get to be a citizen. It's how I get to be a family man. If the family is the 6 people in my immediate family, or is it my children? No, or is it, we just expand out concentrically and all of a sudden we're the family of humanity and we're 7.8 billion deep and that's our family and that's who I am. The thread, at least as you speak, appears to be in the world of listening. In some variation, some permutation of this term listening, that obviously I like speaking. I just took the last 3 minutes to explain what it is I'm trying to get to. I like hearing myself speak. I like speaking. But when I'm speaking, I'm not listening. And one of the things that's happened in the last 10 years for me is just a reverent respect for the notion of listening and the power of listening to create futures, like, even more than what I say. Like, listening is what creates a future. Speak to our listeners a little bit, not so much about what I said, although if there's something I said that tweaks you, that's fine. But where does listening come in for Brandon Erdos? Where is your spectacular listening land? Or where are you working on your listening? Where is your front edge of your listening? How about that?
Well, right now it's with you, Fred. So, I have that delicious opportunity to be talking with you and listening to you, and then speak into the listening of your listeners. So there's an opportunity to, in one sense, create who's listening to this and create my speaking that, that they're going to be interested in anything I have to say. And then kind of be like, oh, I better say, like, not like I have to, but really in a sense of like bringing honor to what I'm saying. So you were saying about like being a parent and listening, like one of the places that I think I'm always looking at my listening is like, what am I bringing to my kids? How am I listening to my kids? And, there have been plenty of times in their 13 and 14-year-old lives that listening to them has not been like, I haven't listened to them as like the great human beings that I know that they are. And then, it's like being a parent takes something. And then, even this past year, it's been expanding my listening, expanding what I hear is possible for my kids and giving them a space to be who they are. Like, I really saw this year how my listening of them was rather narrow and didn't give them space to be able to grow and develop and explore. And, I wanted something done one way and they wanted it done another way. And I'm the parent, it's going to go my way. And then, it's like, what's that all about? What's that conflict about? And instead of being right about it, it's being curious about what they're dealing with. And what's developed out of that has just been like an even deeper relationship than I already had. I think about conversations I've had with my kids, my 13, like again, they're 13 and 14-year-old daughters, and their excitement when they see me, the joy of conversation, the laughter, the exploration of life. And it's like the great privilege I have of that in that. And I hear other people share about their kids, and it's like, oh my God, and I can't believe they did, and they don't, and it's for me, it's like, oh my God, listen to the story that my daughter and I, like, we came up with spontaneously on a ride to ballet one day. Like we created this fabulous, like, farcical story, and we were just laughing and giggling the whole time.
Yeah.
So the immediate answer to your question is, where's the front edge of my listening? And my front edge of my listening is wherever I am right now. Who I'm talking to, it's there. And then there are the places where I say it's important that I listen, which might ultimately be everywhere in life. Right?
Yeah. So is there, for our listeners, and I ask this not only for our listeners, and not like I know the answer and then you can speak it, not at all. So I'm including myself as part of this listening team for what it is you're about to say about this. Like, I would like to upgrade my listening. I said, I'm a pretty good listener. People tell me I'm a good listener. That's not good enough for me. I know that when I'm listening, I can't even get myself in trouble. If all I'm really listening, I can't even put my foot in my mouth. I can't even insult people. If all I'm doing is listening, I can't create through my listening any kind of adversarial relationships. Through my listening, all I can really do is be like super curious or amused or entertained by the world as it unfolds in front of me. Like, as long as I'm not listening, perhaps just to design what it is that I'm about to say when I finally steal the space back. If I'm really listening for what is happening, who is saying with words or non-words, given your musician colleague back that you spoke to earlier, you don't even have to speak words. If I'm listening to listening, it is so much more glorious, less risky, and way more entertaining and amusing, way more information filled, way more surprise and miracle filled if I can keep my eyes open to listen. Isn't that great? Eyes open to listen. Then how can I upgrade my listening? How can I make it so that listening like profound, radical, authentic listening becomes even more available to me.
Well, the first thing I would say is that it's extraordinarily dangerous to listen,
Mm,
Fred.
really?
Yeah, I would say it's probably one of the, I mean, it might be the most freeing thing in the world, but I don't know if it's not, you said something in there about it
Safer.
being
Yeah.
safe or safer. Yeah, I'm
Say
not
more
sure it's
about that.
safer. I don't know,
Is it because I might hear things I don't want to hear? Or what are you saying?
yeah, I mean, I think there's like having to hear things that you don't want to hear or consider things that you don't want to consider. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but then you have to deal with yourself.
Okay.
So, I mean, look, I think you've mentioned Landmark here. So, if there was a place to go to discover listening, I think one of the places would be the
Mm,
Landmark Forum, and it's a place to distinguish who we are, as who you are as human being in the space of everything and listening. So, the training and development I've had through Landmark Worldwide, Landmark Education certainly is massively a huge contribution to me in the space of developing listening. I mean, I've learned listening in psychiatry, psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic training. I think back the people who trained me and the expert professors I had, and I think about how they listened,
hmm
and the space that they provided to the patients to be able to say whatever they needed to say, and the depth of understanding and connection, right? And really, I would say one of the things in terms of developing your listening is hear what other people say and then listen to the BS that's going on inside your head in response to
hmm
them. You want to continue, like, peel back that onion and notice how with everything that's said to you, you have something said in response that's probably, that I would assert is probably a reaction, and that you're not really listening. You're just waiting, like you said, for the person to finish speaking so that you could
hmm
say the next. So I think it really is, it's kind of like taking on the practice of noticing what the little voice inside my head is saying, even before
hmm
I'm saying it. Like, I already have my response.
hmm
It goes back to like, oh, I already know how
hmm
this is going to go.
Exactly. And I'm somehow brought to this space of you as a drummer, which non-drummers and perhaps yourself would also see. It's just a loud sound maker after all. You don't have to be loud, but you definitely don't have to be loud as a drummer. I get it. But there are points in music where you become sort of the sound maker, or even in drumming circles where the backdrop sound is a drummer. There's like, to be an effective sound maker, to be one that lands the sound you're about to make resonantly into the space it's being called for, or that's calling for it. You mentioned a concept that certainly I've heard of before, this about listening to the listening of you, like, being aware of what the listening is calling for and then delivering the sound into that space. I suspect that's what you were maybe saying, something like that. But to be a drummer, you really are overt sound maker. But, that's what drums do. Drums make noise.
Well, all music is making noise. I have a lot of little toys, and my sound making is more rhythmic and less
Okay.
melodic,
Okay.
perhaps. And even within, I would say, even within drumming, there are distinctions around, there's like melodic drumming, but it's still like I'm limited to this tub and how this tub sounds. And like I can maybe vary the sound a little bit, but it's not like I can sing a
That's right.
song.
Exactly. So now the interface between, banging on drums and the listening that either preceded that or that is going on as you're delivering that or that you're creating for us as you're making that sound. I would love to explore a little bit the interface between listening and being a sensational drummer. Maybe you're not ready for that. I don't know. But yeah.
I think it's practice and having good mentors and teachers. It's listening to other music, right? There's a depth of comfort and knowledge that you need to have with your instrument, whatever, and being willing to play and then being willing to be terrible at it. I mean, I think even I can see there are places in my life where I've gotten old and crusty and have been unwilling to be
Mm,
bad at things. And again, that's like a place where there's a limit in discovery. I mean, one of the things I've taken on over the last year and a half, 2 years now is basically playing drums every day or almost every day for at least a half hour, just to play. Sometimes I play along to music. Sometimes it's playing along to a metronome, and sometimes it's just to play, and discover. And it's like really
mm.
rediscovering And sometimes I land on something that is really, really cool. And then I start to sprinkle in variations here and there. And other times it's like, I'm terrible today. And I just hang it up and never play again. And then I go back to playing the next day because that's my commitment. I'm a drummer. So I think it's being willing to play and to try things and to not have it all figured out.
As a drummer, it's been a little while since I've needed to know this, but, I know that as a percussionist, coming in from piano in some ways being a percussionist instrument, but moving then to the more classic percussionist instruments of, the timpani or the bass or the snare or the tambourine or bongos or is there one of those drums, like a subset of your drum set, that when you're pissed off or when you're in love or when you're like, the drum represents in and of itself a certain mood or a certain human nature? Is the bass drum more for a certain way of being, or can it be incorporated into all ways of being?
I've never really thought about it in that way. I think about where I have this really great ride cymbal. So it's like the cymbal that, like if I'm playing, it's basically you ride on it. Like, so it's like constant. And I don't know if this is from my old jazz training, current listening, but I love playing around with the different sounds on it and the rhythms and it's just this, I don't know, it's like a whole world, like the ride cymbal. And there's really, playing the drum set is an interplay of all of the limbs. So it's the, like the ride cymbal, the bass drum, the snare drum, and the hi-hat. And, so it's just been this whole world of bodily, it really is a bodily exploration that creates a sound. And yeah, look, there's sort of like, you want to be, there's like a way to make a sexy sound, and that's probably more like between the hi-hat and the snare drum and the bass drum. And there's like the bombastic sound and like in your face things exploding. And that's like the crash cymbal and the bass drum. And there are obviously different moods. And I think the drums create a foundation, but I think that's one of the things that I really love about the drums is that the drums are a social instrument. That drums on their own are really cool, but drums with somebody else, and drums are paired with somebody else, and the drum set's paired with somebody else. Now it's not just a new world; it's a whole new universe.
I can see that.
It's like, and like a bass player can do their own thing, a piano player can do their own thing, but you add drums to that, and again, it's like a whole new universe. And then if you start adding in more instruments, then it's like a totally, you're playing a totally different. So. And to go back to the listening, I think, listen to what the other player is playing. Like this is where Ringo was the master. He played to the song, and I think it's like there's a beingness of Ringo that I bring. It's like I've never wanted to be like the standout, like superstar drummer, but I'm going to like elevate what's happening.
So the expression that's available, the languages that are available, through the cymbal or through the hi-hat or, through the other crash cymbal or the riding cymbal versus the crash cymbal or the timpani or the tambourine or I suppose the maraca or you have a capacity to speak so many languages. And like you said, not necessarily, what is the word, melodiously, not necessarily through melody, but to express yourself like gutturally or from, I don't know.
Well, I would say, Fred, I think drumming, it's like rhythm is fundamental to life and it taps into something very primal. And I think musical expression is something natural to life, and we can all sing and we can all drum. I think, like you can put out a bunch of drums on the side of your road. People will sit down and community will, drum circle. Nobody needs to be related to each other. All there is like drumming, banging on something, listening. And there's like a swirl, it's almost like there's a swirl and there's a handoff of who's leading. There's this interplay and the different sounds and the crescendos and decrescendos, the speeding up and the slowing down. It's like this natural breathing. And so to me, drumming taps into something very primal and very physical. And it used to bug the hell out of me when I was younger. Like I'd have my drum set and people would just want to come and sit down and play. Like people see the drum set and they're like, oh, I want to play, I want to play, I want to play. Right. And it's like, no, I know how to, but they're mine. I know how to play. Like I know how to play. Right. But it really is, I think there's something very primal and fundamental to rhythm and drumming, and its community, and it's expressive. And who cares? I mean, like, even if you think about like even marching, like like when we walk, there's a rhythm to it. And like, if you're listening, you can get into it. Like, I know like sometimes when I'm walking, it's like, I'm into that rhythm. And then there's like this other sound, and then there's this other sound, so there's like, I think there's something about rhythm and drumming that's very, very fundamental to human being.
Yeah, the drum circles, the archetypal drum circles are so effective. They hit spaces that without a drum could not have been touched in my human experience. And the other place that I'm reminded of as you speak is I remember, I guess I wasn't a child. It was the middle of high school. I had one of my best friends was a pretty good drummer. May Spencer rest in peace. And I remember going in his basement where he had a really nice set. And he was like, Freddie, check this out. I was Freddie back then. He goes, check this out. And he played in a memory of Elizabeth Reed. And
Yeah.
I was crying at the end. I was like, Spencer, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? And he just banged out in a memory of Elizabeth Reed. And I became a drum lover that day. It's like, oh, I had no idea. I knew Ringo and I knew the Stones and I knew what I knew about Bonham and Moon and all those guys. I mean, after all, those are my homies. But I'd never been in the presence of the magic that in that song and Spencer being in it delivered.
Yeah, I saw the Allman Brothers Band in August. The first time I saw them live was like August 1991. So I was going into my senior year of high school. And I saw them, and I just remember the whole time just being in awe of the whole experience. Like I was like, what? You can do this? You're allowed to do this? You're allowed what? And then the two drummers and the interaction between the two of them, and then the other musicians that were there playing. And, it was kind of like,
yeah, otherworldly.
I was already hooked on playing drums and music, but it was like there were many years of following the Allman Brothers Band around. But like really, like I really remember saying to myself, like, you're allowed to do this?
I'm going to tease my wife. She's from Ukraine and she knows everything about everything except for the stuff that everyone else knows. And she doesn't know anything about those things. And so when I introduced her to the Allman Brothers Band earlier this year, I don't know, is from Eat a Peach or Jessica or I don't know what it was, a Whipping Post, something. And I said, yeah, this is the Allman Brothers. And she said, the what? And I was like, the Allman Brothers. She says, like the nut? I'm like, no. And so it's always so cute that she doesn't have a clue about the stuff that runs through my veins. It runs through my veins. So we jokingly call them now the Macadamia Nut Brothers, and so, yeah, anyways.
Before they were the Allman Brothers, I think they had a band called the Almond
really? Is
Joy.
That really actually true? Wow, that's amazing.
I think so.
Let's circle back here. We have a few more minutes. I want to touch on something that came up for me. How does Smart Rat fit into all this deep discussion that we've been, really channeling here? And the drumming discussion, the archetypal, raw nature of humanity, because that is the first thing you called yourself. And, as a psychiatrist, I'm trained to listen to those first two words. And that's what I heard. And is this something that you own with authority and embrace with love, that you are that? Because there's some sort of derogatory implication as well of just being a smart rat, going for the cocaine instead of the water or whatever. Like, what do you really got going on? Tell me a bit about Smart Rat and how that fits Brandon Erdos.
It's a great way to go through life, Fred.
That's true.
Being smart, and I don't think I would have defined myself as that earlier on in my life. It's like being a smart rat. It was like I learned that being smart got me places. And getting through college and medical school and residency. And, so to me, it's not necessarily a derogatory term, in the circles that I frequent, it's
just what we
a term that we use. Right. And ultimately, it's something to be responsible for. And in the sense of like, this is a way of being that I have that may limit my expression in the world and what's really possible. And there's probably quite a bit of smart rat here in chatting with you and getting to expound philosophically and all of that. Right. Like, I don't often get to have conversations like this. So there's a joy in that. And then there really is, like, I'm proud of it. Like, I've read what I've read. I've learned what I've learned. I
Yeah.
have the knowledge that I have. My livelihood is based on it. People rely on me for it. I wouldn't be where I am without it. And it's not the only expression.
Beautifully said. And so, it's like I feel like I'm ready to tease it's evidence-based after all. It's experience and evidence-based in its own way to be a smart rat, like to know how things are likely to go, or to know how things are going, or to actually, when called upon, respond effectively and with velocity the way I'm supposed to or being expected to. It's part of being a smart rat,
Yeah, what I can say though at this point in my life is like I put myself in positions now to really be challenged that being a smart rat is not the desired way of being. I have places in my life where it works really, really well. And the places that give me real juice in life.
Interesting, because it cuts out surprises. It cuts out things that you otherwise might not have been able to see.
Yeah, it cuts out surprises for myself, and it cuts out who other people can be for me.
Well, Brandon, your self-awareness is inspiring, and the conversation itself has been brilliant and fun. So I'd like to ask if listeners, they may have just fallen in love with you, or they may just be curious about you, or they may want to, learn more about you, or just contact you or follow you in some ways. How would you like our listeners to be able to, to be instructed to do so if they were interested?
Wow, there's really no way. It's really what it comes down to.
Sorry, listeners. I tried.
No, I so appreciate it. Professionally, I have my contact information professionally that's posted on a website called ZenCare. And then there's my email address, just my name, Brandon, BRANDON .erdos, ERDOS @gmail.com. And, that's probably the most direct way to get in touch with me is to send me an email.
Perfect. Beautiful. And we'll have a little bio on, on the front edge that people will be drawn to listen to this. So we'll come through that bio and get to see the incredibly handsome face of my good friend, Brandon Erdos. Thank you for going deep with us today. Thank you for having fun, just picking up some stones and seeing what's underneath. And thank you for sharing so much of how you see life with both me and our listeners. I certainly resonate with so much of what you're up to. Not a drummer, but most of the other stuff you are, I am. So it's really been a pleasure. Is there anything you want to say in clothing? If you could put your clothing back on now.
Thank you very much. I'll put my clothes so that I can say it. Thanks, Fred. It's a good thing. It's a good thing they're not seeing the video.
Exactly. And is there? So it just really has been a deep pleasure and honor to be with you. Thank you for being here. And is there anything you want to say in closing?
It's great to talk with you and be with you, and thank you.
Awesome. Well, there you go. There's another episode. I mean, how fun are these? And thanks for hanging on. Thanks for being here with us. And if there's anything here that trips a trigger, floats your boat, or has you thinking twice, or maybe discovering something new, good for you. Really, all of those things are available because you're human. And in the end, of course, all I really have to say is welcome indeed to that humanity. Welcome to humanity. Have a great rest of the day, wherever you are, whoever you are, and whoever you're with. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you so much for being here. See you on the next ride. Bye for now.
Hey, welcome to Humanity Family. It's Ryan Levesque here, co-producer of the show. I truly hope you enjoyed Dr. Fred's in-depth conversation today. If you did, and if the conversations we share each week are making a difference for you, could you please take just a moment to leave a rating and a short review on Apple Podcasts? Your enthusiastic review helps new listeners discover the show. Your support here really does make a difference. I'd also like to invite you to reach out to a friend or two who would appreciate today's episode. Maybe shoot them a quick text or email, or maybe pick up the phone and invite them to subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast so they can be enriched from the discovery of amazing ideas and insights each week. As always, you can find past episodes along with the complete show notes and links at welcometohumanity.net/podcast. If you'd like to explore how working one-on-one with Dr. Fred can help you break through whatever challenges you might be facing with your mental health or well-being, leading to new levels of freedom and vitality, I invite you to reach out to us directly by emailing Dr. Fred at welcometohumanity.net. That's DRFRED at welcometohumanity.net. Thanks so much for listening, and keep an ear out for another captivating conversation next week. Have a beautiful day, a beautiful week, and indeed, a beautiful life. Welcome to humanity.